The void screamed, not with sound, but with a tearing pressure that could be felt through marrow and sinew, a vibration that split reality apart like rotten cloth. Within the immaterium, a wound opened, a rupture of sickly light, spilling tendrils of fire that writhed and recoiled like serpents. Demons shrieked and fled the rift, their formless bodies shuddering in awe of what emerged. A man fell through. He came not in armor, nor in any sanctified shell of ceramite, but in flesh, torn shirt clinging to a frame of muscle and scar. His body struck the shattered flagstones of a ruined shrine world with the weight of a meteor. Cracks spidered beneath him, and dust rose like incense disturbed from ancient altars. Logan, Wolverine. He lay motionless at first, every nerve screaming from the transition between worlds. He had crossed dimensions before, mystical portals, cosmic rifts, sorcery gone wrong, but this was different. The air itself was hostile, thick with ash, saturated with centuries of burnt offerings and the sour tang of blood spilled on stone. He coughed once, drawing in a lungful of incense and decay, and his senses sharpened. The world was wrong. Above him stretched a sky clogged with smoke, black as dried blood. Vast towers of stone and iron rose, shattered and leaning, Gothic arches clawing the heavens like skeletal fingers. On the air he caught the copper stench of old sacrifices, the acrid burn of promethium, and underneath it all, whispers, low, maddening, half-heard voices clawing at the edges of his mind. He forced himself upright. His knuckles ached with the promise of violence. 3 blades slid from between his fingers with a metallic snick, their polished edges reflecting the dim crimson glow of distant fires. The sound was comfort and warning both, a hunter's readiness in a place already saturated with prey. Footsteps. Wolverine's ears twitched, catching them before his eyes did. Heavy boots crunching over broken glass, the clatter of metal chains. He ducked into the shadow of a collapsed pillar, pressing low. The figures came into view. Men, but not like any soldiers he had seen before. Their bodies were cloaked in ragged robes, their skin tattooed with blasphemous runes that crawled like scars given life. Rusted blades and stub rifles hung from their hands, their lips moved in ceaseless whispers, praises hissed to unseen gods. Cultists. Wolverine's instincts recognized predators of another sort. Their eyes gleamed with fanatic light, their movements twitching unnatural. They were searching, not for him but for something greater. A shrine lay ahead, its broken altar still reeking of blood, fresh and cloying. One cultist raised a severed head high, chanting to the blackened heavens. Logan's jaw clenched. He had known fanatics, killers who believed their violence sanctified. He had smelled this kind of madness before, but here it was more than zeal. It was worship. The air thickened, the shadows deepened, as if reality itself leaned closer to listen. Wolverine moved. He was on them before they knew. The first cultist's throat split in silence as 3 adamantium claws punched through it, hot blood spraying across cracked stone. Logan pivoted, his other hand slashing in a brutal arc, tearing through flesh and bone like parchment. The whispering broke into screams. Stub round spat, the crude shots whining past his shoulders. He charged through them, a beast in the form of a man, claws flashing. Each strike was final, savage and inevitable. A shot caught him in the chest. He staggered, then straightened, the bullet already forcing its way out of closing flesh. One cultist shrieked, "Demon, demon," before Logan silenced him with a thrust that pinned the heretic to the altar itself. Breathing hard, Logan stood amid corpses, steam rising from his blood-slick claws. His nostrils flared, catching new scents on the air, metal, oil. He turned, eyes narrowing, as figures approached in formation. Unlike the ragged cultists, these came clad in flak armor and carapace plates, lice guns held with drilled precision. Their banners were torn but still bore the double-headed eagle of the Imperium of Man, Imperial Guardsmen. They froze when they saw him, a man drenched in blood, claws extended, corpses of the faithful, or what they might see as the faithful, strewn at his feet. Their officer barked a command. Weapons rose. Dozens of lasguns crackled with energy, all trained on him. Logan lifted his hands slightly, claws still gleaming red. His voice came low, a growl more than words. "I ain't looking for a fight." The guardsmen did not understand his tongue fully, but they understood the posture, the blood, the monstrous silhouette against the burning shrine. One man muttered a prayer, another made the sign of the aquila across his chest. To them he was not a man, he was a mutant, a beast, perhaps even a servant of the warp. The officer's voice was iron. "By order of the Emperor of Mankind, fire." The air split into a storm of las bolts. crimson streaks hammering against Wolverine's flesh. He staggered back, snarling as his healing factor flared, burning, knitting, sealing wounds almost as fast as they were made. The stone behind him cracked with the force, pain ripped through him like molten fire, but he did not fall. The guardsman gasped as the smoke cleared. Logan still stood, his chest smoldered with cauterized holes, blood seeping down his sides, but already his skin bubbled and closed, muscles reweaving beneath. His eyes glowed with a feral light, and his claws hung ready. He was surrounded. The Imperium soldiers chanted prayers, their fingers tight on triggers, fear battling duty, and Logan, breathing smoke and blood, realized a truth that settled in his bones like lead. In this world, he was no hero. He was the heretic, the hunted. The officer's hand trembled, raised for a second volley. Wolverine lowered his head, claws ready as the air thickened once more with incense and the stench of burning flesh. The hunt had begun. The night bled into dawn without light. The ruined shrine world was a wasteland of broken cathedrals, blackened spires jutting from the earth like the ribs of a dead leviathan. Ash fell in soft veils from the skies, thick as snowfall, coating bodies and banners alike until the battlefield seemed frozen in pale dust. Wolverine moved among the ruins. The guardsmen had driven him into the shadows after their first volley. They had come at him in disciplined waves, litanies of the Emperor on their tongues and the hiss of lasguns in their hands. He had endured their fire, each bolt searing, each wound a furnace that closed only to open again. His instincts urged him to slaughter, to rush them and carve through ranks until none stood. But something older than rage held him back. Killing them would change nothing. They were pawns. Soldiers caught in a machine so much larger than themselves. He could smell their fear beneath the incense, could hear the tremor in their hearts when his silhouette rose again and again from the smoke. So he vanished. He slipped into the labyrinth of ruins, ash swirling around his boots. His senses sharpened until every sound was a needle in his ears, the groan of collapsing stone, the hiss of cooling metal, the breath of scavengers creeping along broken walls. The cultists had not all been slain. Logan smelled them first, the rot of unwashed flesh, the copper tang of blood painted in ritual, the stench of open wounds left to fester in honor of their gods. He crouched low, following the trail until his eyes caught them, a knot of robed figures huddled around a brazier of green flame. They muttered words that made the very air crawl, syllables that dragged shadows into impossible shapes. Logan's jaw tightened. The cultists were summoning. The ground pulsed beneath their knees, veins of warp light cutting through stone like glowing scars. The brazier's fire reached higher, twisting into shapes that should not be. From the smoke a clawed hand reached outward. Logan struck before the summoning could finish. He burst from the shadows in a spray of ash, claws extended, a predator's snarl tearing from his throat. The first cultist barely had time to scream before steel split him open. Logan spun, cutting through two more in a single brutal sweep. Their blood sizzled on the brazier's flame, feeding the ritual even as it faltered. One cultist, his eyes black pits of devotion, spat a curse and fired a stub pistol. The round shattered against Logan's skull, staggering him, but he was already moving. He slammed into the heretic, claws driving him into the dirt. The warp hand in the brazier recoiled, shrieking, before dissolving into smoke. The fire guttered, leaving the summoning undone. The survivors fled into the labyrinth, robes flaring like wings, their shrieks echoing into the distance. Logan straightened, chest heaving, his claws dripping red. He wiped the blood against the stone and let his ears stretch outward. The whispers returned, not from the cultists but from the world itself. The warp's voice seeped into his skull, stroking old scars in his mind, murmuring promises he had heard before in other guises. Endless war, endless blood, you are ours. He shook his head violently, growling, driving the voices back with sheer force of will. He had spent a lifetime resisting manipulation. Scientists, governments, men who wanted to turn him into a weapon. He would not kneel to whispers, no matter how cosmic, and yet the warp had tasted him. From the ashes he caught another scent, oil, iron, discipline. The guardsmen were hunting him still. Their boots marched in squads, their auspex scanners sweeping broken vaults. They would find the corpses of the cultists soon, and they would not see a savior, they would see a beast. Wolverine moved deeper into the ruins. The shrine world was a graveyard of faith. Collapsed statues of the Emperor lay shattered, their stone faces worn down by centuries of smoke and grief. Pews lay splintered, hymnals torn and rotted. He stepped across an altar where hundreds had burned in sacrifice, the stone still slick with a residue that stank of blood and incense. His nose wrinkled. This was not a world of hope. It was a world bled dry by faith, consumed by a god who demanded only obedience and fire. He remembered Xavier's dream, mutants and humans living together, a world of peace. He remembered Jean's face, the moments of fragile beauty he had tried to protect. The contrast was like a knife in his chest. Here there was no dream, only empire and annihilation. The guardsmen drew nearer, their voices carried in the ash, prayers shouted before each sweep, orders given with iron finality. Logan ducked into the skeleton of a cathedral, crouching behind a cracked pillar. Through the gloom he watched them pass, armor dull, faces grim. They bore the eagle on their shoulders, weapons in hand, lips whispering the same phrase over and over. For the Emperor, for the Emperor. One soldier paused, turning his head. His eyes scanned the shadows, narrowing. Logan's nostrils flared. He could hear the man's heartbeat, steady but sharp. Instinct screamed to strike, to end the threat before it grew. But the soldier moved on. Logan stayed in the shadows, his claws retracted, the predator restrained for now. He moved deeper still, away from the searching patrols, following the faint trails of blood the cultists had left behind. He would find them, root them out, tear their heresy apart before it birthed more horrors. He did not do it for the Imperium. He did not do it for their Emperor. He did it because predators hunt, because killers should be killed, because in this ash-stained world of madness, at least one truth remained. The guilty bled when his claws found them. The trail led toward a broken stair descending into catacombs beneath the shrine. The air grew colder as he descended, the ash thinning to reveal stone slick with condensation. Torches burned low, green fire that hissed like serpents, and then he heard it, a chant, low and steady, rising from below. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds. The cult had not been broken. They had gathered in force, their whispers swelling into a hymn of madness. The ground quaked with each syllable. Logan bared his teeth, claws sliding free with that familiar metallic snick. He had stepped into the nest. The catacombs shuddered with voices. Hundreds of cultists knelt in the gloom, their ragged forms pressed against damp stone, their foreheads bloodied from self-inflicted wounds. The cavern smelled of iron, sweat and rot. Their chant rolled like thunder, each syllable dragging across the warp. At the center of the chamber, a vast mural of demonic faces carved into the rock twisted as if alive, mouths stretching, eyes rolling, feeding on the worship that bled into reality. Logan crouched in the shadows above them, perched on a cracked ledge. His nostrils burned with the stench, his ears rang with the endless murmur. This wasn't worship, it was infestation, and he was deep inside its hive. The predator in him stirred, his claws slid free with a whisper of steel. He could smell the veins of each cultist, feel the rhythm of their hearts. A single leap, and he would be among them, ripping their madness apart one by one. But he hesitated. Something deeper than instinct prickled the back of his skull. Danger, more disciplined than the chaos of cultists. The scent came first. Oil, ozone, machine grease. The sound followed, the steady mechanical rhythm of boots striking stone. Not frantic, not stumbling, trained. The guardsmen had arrived. Logan's gaze flicked toward the entrance tunnels. Silhouettes emerged, armored forms marching in precise formation, lasguns held like extensions of their bodies. The glow of Auspex scanners swept the walls, their mechanical chirps cutting through the cult's chant. At their head strode a commissar in long coat and peaked cap, his eyes like burning coals, his hand resting on a bolt pistol etched with scripture. The chant faltered. The cultists hissed, some reaching for knives, others raising rusted firearms. The commissar's voice cut through the cavern like a blade. For the Emperor, cleanse them all. Bolter fire thundered, lasguns cracked. The cavern erupted in screams as the Imperium's soldiers unleashed fury into the kneeling mass. Cultists fell, burning holes seared through their torsos, skulls bursting into ash. The cavern filled with smoke and ozone, fire painting the walls red. Logan leapt. He dropped into the chaos like a meteor, claws slashing, tearing through cultists who tried to rise. His feral roar joined the thunder of guns, his strikes quick and final. A heretic with a chain axe swung at him. Logan caught the descending blade on his claws, sparks screaming, before driving his other hand through the man's chest. For a moment Guardsman and Wolverine fought side by side. The soldiers didn't question the beast tearing apart heretics. They had no time, but their eyes flicked toward him, uneasy, when they saw his wounds closing as quickly as they were made, when they saw the red gleam of his claws in the gloom. The commissar's gaze fixed on him. Mutant, he spat, voice cutting through fire and death. An unholy aberration. Logan froze only long enough to meet the man's eyes. He saw no fear there, only judgment, absolute and final. He had seen eyes like that before, men who believed themselves righteous executioners. Before he could speak, a new sound split the cavern, heavy, measured, mechanical. From the depths of the catacomb emerged towering figures in Baroque armor, their presence crushing the air. Chaos Space Marines. Their black and brass plate was scarred with centuries of war, demonic glyphs etched across pauldrons that glowed faintly in the half-light. Their eyes burned red behind cracked visors. The cultists screamed in ecstasy. The guardsmen faltered, their volleys breaking uselessly against corrupted ceramite. Bolts roared from the heretic Astartes, explosive rounds tearing men apart in sprays of blood and ash. The cavern shook with each detonation. Logan snarled and charged. He slammed into the first Chaos Marine like a beast against an iron wall. His claws scraped sparks off the giant's armor, punching through at the seams. The Marine backhanded him, sending him crashing into a pillar, bones snapping like twigs. Logan rolled, already knitting back together, and lunged again. His claws found a weak point beneath the arm, punching through, hot blood spraying. The Marine roared, bringing a chainsword down in a screaming arc. Logan caught it with his claws, the teeth grinding against adamantium, sparks blinding. Pain ripped through his forearms, but he shoved forward, snarling, driving the blade offline before slashing the traitor's throat. The guardsmen saw him fight, saw the mutant carving through monsters they themselves could barely scratch. Some shouted praises, others whispered prayers, uncertain if he was salvation or curse. The commissar did not falter. "Do not be deceived," he roared, firing his bolt pistol into a cultist's skull. "He is not of the Emperor's light. He is heresy given flesh." Logan drove his claws through another Marine's chest, dragging them free in a gush of fire and ichor. His breath came ragged, his body torn and burning, but still he rose, still he fought. The guardsmen's faith wavered. Their eyes darted between the monster in their ranks and the monsters he slaughtered. Was he ally or abomination? Logan bared his teeth, standing in the carnage, chest heaving, eyes gleaming with feral light. He could smell their fear, he could hear their thoughts in their silence. The commissar raised his pistol again, pointing it at Logan's head. "In the name of the Emperor, abomination, you will burn." Lars guns shifted, soldiers hesitated, their barrels wavering between chaos and the man of claws. The cavern reeked of blood, smoke and incense. The statues on the walls seemed to lean forward, their carved divinic mouths grinning in delight at the tension. Logan's claws dripped red, his body healed, his eyes locked on the commissar. The war had stopped being simple, and as the pistol sight fixed on his brow, he knew this world would never see him as anything but prey. Chains bit into his wrists. Logan sat on his knees, head bowed, iron shackles binding arms that could tear through ceramite. Each chain was etched with scripture, words in a language he did not know but felt burning against his skin. The wounds they left did not heal. For the first time since he had arrived, his flesh refused to close. He was no longer in the catacombs. The guardsmen had dragged him through the smoke, past the wreckage of cultists and the broken bodies of traitor Astartes. Some had looked at him with awe, others with naked hate. The commissar had said nothing, only leveled his bolt pistol at Logan's skull until reinforcements arrived. They had taken him in silence, muzzled and bound like a beast. Now he knelt in a chamber that stank of incense and rust, candles guttered in long rows, their smoke choking the air. At the far end of the hall, beneath a looming statue of the Emperor carved in marble, stood the figure who commanded it all, the Inquisitor. Her armor was dark, chased with gold script, a rosette hanging heavy on her chest. Her eyes were sharp as blades, her face pale from years without sunlight. In one hand she held a tome bound in cracked leather, in the other a staff crowned with the aquila. She did not move as she studied him, as though measuring a specimen on a table. "So," she said at last, her voice cold as stone, "the mutant speaks." Logan raised his head slowly, his eyes burning beneath the weight of the candlelight. "Name's Logan. Where I'm from they call me Wolverine." The Inquisitor tilted her head. "A beast dressed as a man." "Been called worse," Logan muttered, voice low and rough. She circled him slowly, the chains creaking as his muscles flexed. "You heal from wounds no man survives. Your bones are unbreakable, laced with metal unknown to our forges. Your claws," she gestured, and a scribe unrolled a parchment covered in sketches of him, each detail meticulously recorded, "are weapons grown from your very flesh." And yet, no trace of psychic taint, no mark of the warp. Curious, Logan's lip curled. "I ain't one of your daemons." "Perhaps not," she said softly, "but you are an abomination, a tool, and the Imperium does not suffer such things to live, unless they are useful." The words hung in the chamber like a sentence. Guards shifted at the edges of the hall, lasguns held ready, waiting for her judgment. Logan's claws twitched against the restraints, the chains burned, his body ached from wounds that still refused to close. He had been caged before by Weapon X, by men who wanted to turn him into nothing more than claws and rage. The memory clawed at him, bitter and sharp. The Inquisitor leaned close, her eyes inches from his. "Tell me, creature, what do you serve?" Logan growled. "I serve no one." Her gaze did not waver. "All serve. whether the Emperor or the dark gods, you cannot stand apart, not here. She turned away, her cloak sweeping across the stones. I could burn you now, reduce you to ash for the good of mankind. It would be my duty. And yet, she paused. You slaughtered cultists with a ferocity that would humble a space marine. You carved through traitors as if they were nothing. Men say you cannot die. That makes you valuable. The guards shifted again, murmuring prayers. The word valuable carried more weight than any absolution. The Inquisitor raised her staff. You will be bound, branded, made to serve until your use ends. Refuse, and I will have you destroyed here and now. Logan's teeth ground together. His instincts screamed to tear free, to rip her throat out and escape into the shadows. He could feel the predator within him pacing, demanding blood. But the chains burned, and every eye in the chamber was a rifle sight. He spat to the side, blood flecking the stone. You think chains'll make me your dog? You don't know me. The Inquisitor's smile was thin and cruel. We will learn. We always do. She gestured, and acolytes approached, carrying brands heated until they glowed white. Logan's nostrils flared at the stench of hot iron. They pressed the mark into his flesh, an aquila encircled by wards. The pain ripped a growl from his throat, his skin sizzling, his healing factor struggling against the alien scarring. The mark remained, burned deep, refusing to fade. The Inquisitor watched without flinching. Now you are known, the Emperor's hound, whether you will it or not. Logan's vision swam. He bowed his head, not in submission but to hide the fury in his eyes. They would brand him, bind him, call him heretic and saint in the same breath, but he was no man's hound. The doors groaned open, light spilling across the floor. A soldier rushed in, panting, dropping to one knee. My Lady Inquisitor, the cult spreads across the lower levels. Warp breaches multiply. We are overwhelmed. The Inquisitor's eyes hardened. She turned back to Logan, considering him for one long silent moment. Then she gave her command. Release the beast. Chains fell. The scripture still burned against his skin, but his arms were free. His claws slid out with a metallic snikt, dripping with blood from his own wrists. He rose slowly, towering in the candlelight, his shadow stretching across the Emperor's statue. The guards recoiled, fear plain on their faces. Even bound, even branded, he was still a predator, still more beast than weapon. Logan stared at the Inquisitor, his voice a low growl. You set me loose. You better pray I don't turn on the hand that holds the leash. The Inquisitor did not blink. Pray, mutant. I do not pray. I command. The chamber shook as a distant explosion thundered through the catacombs, dust raining from the ceiling. The voices of cultists rose in wild, ecstatic cries. Something vast stirred below. Logan bared his teeth, claws gleaming. The hunt was not over. It had only begun. The tunnels howled. As Logan descended into the depths once more, the air thickened with an unseen weight. The catacombs were no longer stone and silence. They pulsed, as though the walls themselves breathed. Green fire flickered in sconces, casting grotesque shadows that bent and stretched beyond natural shapes. Every step echoed like a heartbeat. Every exhale of breath seemed stolen by the darkness. The Inquisitor's acolytes had spread torches and incense behind them, the guardsmen chanting litanies as they advanced. But Logan was ahead, stalking in silence, his claws still damp with his own blood from the branding. The scripture burned on his flesh, an alien scar he could not shake, and in that burn the whispers began. At first he thought they were the echoes of cultists. Then he realized the voices had no source. They were inside him. A woman's tone, soft as velvet, crooning from the edges of thought. A guttural snarl, deep as the ocean floor, demanding violence. Others hissed and murmured in languages without words. Hunter, Eternal One. Logan froze in the passage. His ears twitched. His instincts flared with danger sharper than any scent. We see you. We know you. You cannot die, can you? How sweet your eternity will be when bound to us. He growled low, pressing a hand to his temple as if he could claw the voices out. Shut it. The voices laughed. From the stone around him faces formed in the flicker of torchlight, half seen, grinning with teeth like daggers, eyes wide with hunger. The shadows bent toward him, coiling like serpents. He lashed out, claws striking through empty air, sparks screeching from the wall. The guardsmen behind him whispered prayers more fiercely, but they saw nothing. To them, the mutant fought phantoms. The Inquisitor's voice cut through the gloom. Ignore it. The warp tests you. It seeks a crack in your soul. Logan spat, blood on his lips. It'll break its teeth trying. But the truth clawed at him, because part of him recognized the voices. They weren't just daemons. They were every ghost that had ever haunted him, every time he'd given in to rage, every life his claws had taken, whispering back to him from the dark. The whispers grew sharper. We are the blood you spilled, the children, the innocents, the countless dead. You belong to us. His breath came ragged. He remembered Japan, Canada, Weapon X. He remembered Jean's eyes the moment he had failed her, the bodies he had left behind in smoking ruins. His hands trembled against his will, claws gleaming in the firelight. The Inquisitor stepped closer, staff raised, her eyes cold. "Control yourself, beast, or the warp will claim you." He glared at her, fury and pain boiling. "Don't preach at me, you don't know what I've carried." But even as he snarled, the warp's laughter filled his skull. They reached a cavern, vast as a cathedral, its ceiling lost in darkness. Here the cultists gathered in a circle of bone, dozens of them swaying, their chants deafening. At the center floated a tear in reality itself, warp light bleeding into the material world, a scar that pulsed with sickly radiance. Clawed hands pressed outward from within, straining to break through. The guards opened fire at once, last bolts crackling across the chamber. Cultists screamed but did not falter, their blood fueling the widening tear. The whispers surged in Logan's head, drowning out the gunfire. "Enter us. Be ours. Endless battle, endless blood. You were made for nothing else." For a heartbeat he faltered, his claws lowered, his heart thundered. The promise was temptation, freedom from guilt, freedom from restraint, to give himself over to the predator he had always been. Then he saw them, the guardsmen, mortal men who still fought, knowing they would die, their eyes wide with fear but steady with duty. They bled, screamed, burned but did not yield, for something greater than themselves. It cut through him sharper than any claw. With a roar that split the chamber, Logan leapt into the cultists. His claws shredded through flesh and bone, his body a blur of violence. The summoners shrieked as blood sprayed across their circle, their ritual faltering. He tore through them like a storm, his healing factor shrugging off blades and fire, his rage drowning the whispers. The warp scar pulsed violently, the hands within screeching, retreating as the chant broke apart. The cultists fell, their bodies twitching in death spasms, the chamber thick with copper stench. Logan stood over the corpses, chest heaving, claws dripping. The whispers hissed and faded, retreating to the corners of his mind, but not gone, never gone. The Inquisitor approached slowly, staff tapping stone, eyes never leaving him. "You resisted, that is rare." He glared back, blood running down his cheek, his voice hoarse. "I've been resisting all my life." She studied him in silence, then inclined her head slightly, as though acknowledging something dangerous but undeniable. "Perhaps you are more than beast." Logan sheathed his claws with a sharp snick, the sound echoing through the dead cavern. He turned from her, nostrils flaring, listening to the silence left behind. But in that silence, deep within, the warp still whispered, "You cannot run. You will come to us in the end." Logan's fists clenched, blood dripping from his palms where claws had half pierced his own flesh. His voice was a growl, half to himself, half to the shadows. "Over my dead body." The warp laughed in reply. The shrine world burned. At dawn, the first shells fell, artillery screaming from the horizon, pounding the ruins until cathedrals collapsed into rubble and statues of the Emperor toppled into the ash. The ground shook beneath the bombardment, each impact sending plumes of fire into the sky. Chaos banners rippled in the smoke, their twisted symbols daubed in blood, their chanting warriors surging forward like a tide of rot and iron. Wolverine stood at the ramparts of a shattered wall, last fire crackling around him as the guardsmen unleashed volley after volley into the advancing swarm. His claws slid free with a metallic snick, breath misting in the dawn chill. The Inquisitor had given him no choice, fight or be destroyed. Not that he needed convincing. The enemy's stench filled his nostrils, oil and decay, rust and sacrificial blood. The warp howled behind their every step. They were predators, yes, but not the kind he respected. They killed not out of instinct or survival, but devotion to chaos itself. The first wave hit the line. Cultists swarmed over broken stone, their rusted weapons raised high, throats raw from endless hymns to dark gods. Guardsmen met them with disciplined fire, cutting down dozens, but still they came. The clash was sudden, brutal, blades against bayonets, Lars guns turned to clubs, blood soaking the ash until the ground became a slick mire. Logan leapt into them like a storm. His claws punched through the chest of the first heretic, tearing free in a spray of red. He spun, slashing another across the throat, ducked beneath a wild swing, and gutted a third. Every movement was instinct, honed by centuries of violence, his body a weapon no forge could replicate. Stub rounds tore into him, a bayonet drove through his side, fire licked across his skin, each wound burned but already his flesh knitted, blood sealing, bone reforming. He snarled through the pain and kept moving. The guardsmen saw him fight, saw him stand where men would fall, saw him butcher cultists with a ferocity beyond comprehension. Some cried out in awe, calling him a saint sent by the emperor. Others recoiled, crossing themselves, whispering that no holy man bled and healed like that. Above the din, the Inquisitor's voice thundered, calm and merciless, "Hold the line, for the emperor." The second wave crashed. This time it was no rabble. Towering figures in blackened armor strode through the smoke, Chaos Space Marines, their voices booming with laughter and blasphemy. Bolters roared from their gauntlets, explosive shells tearing guardsmen apart in sprays of blood and fire. Their chainswords screamed as they charged, carving men down like wheat. Logan met them head-on. His claws clashed against a chainsword, sparks screaming as adamantium bit against teeth of steel. The Marine pressed forward, stronger by far, but Logan ducked low, driving his other hand up beneath the traitor's arm. His claws punched through armor, tearing into flesh, hot ichor spraying across his face. He roared, ripping free, and the giant toppled. Another came at him, bolter blazing. Explosives slammed into Logan's chest, hurling him backward into stone. His body shattered, ribs crushed, lungs torn open. He fell in the dirt, choking blood. For a heartbeat, the world dimmed. Then he rose again, bones cracked back into place, his chest sealed, smoking flesh knitting. He snarled, blood dripping from his lips, and charged once more. His claws punched through the Marine's visor, tearing out the traitor's face in a spray of gore. The guardsmen around him faltered in terror. Some dropped their weapons, staring wide-eyed. A man who could not die, a monster drenched in blood, fighting both their enemies and their faith. The Inquisitor's eyes never left him. Her voice cut through the chaos, calm, assessing. She saw what the others saw, not a man, not a mutant, but a weapon. The battlefield became a slaughterhouse. Logan carved through traitors, his claws slick with blood, his roars echoing over the din. The guards rallied behind him, some emboldened by his ferocity, others whispering prayers of protection against his presence. Chaos Marines fell, their corrupted armor pierced by a ferrule that should not exist. But the enemy was endless. For every cultist cut down, two more surged forward. For every Marine slain, another rose from the smoke. The warp tore wider above the battlefield, green light spilling into the sky, demonic laughter echoing on the wind. Logan's breath came ragged, his healing factor burning with overuse. His body screamed, but still he fought, driven by instinct, by rage, by the need to kill before he was killed. Then it came. A shadow fell across the battlefield, vast and terrible. From the smoke strode a champion of chaos, his armor twisted into shapes that writhed, his helm crowned with horns, his blade wreathed in fire. A chaos lord, his presence alone enough to break mortal courage. Guardsmen dropped to their knees, some fleeing, others screaming. The lord's voice boomed like thunder. "Behold, mortals, your false emperor cannot save you, and you." His burning gaze fixed on Logan, recognition flaring in warp-lit eyes. "You are no servant of man, you are ours, made for slaughter, made for eternity." The whispers surged back into Logan's skull, louder than ever, clawing at his thoughts. "Yes, join us, end the fight, be the beast you were born to be." Logan staggered, his claws trembling. For a heartbeat, he saw himself giving in, saw himself drenched in blood, leading tides of slaughter across galaxies. The temptation burned like acid. Then he snarled, shaking his head, baring his teeth. "I ain't yours." The Chaos Lord raised his blade, fire howling across its edge. "Then you will fall." Logan lowered into a crouch, claws extended, blood dripping into the ash. His chest rose and fell like a beast at the brink, his eyes locked on the giant before him. Around them guardsmen cowered, demons laughed, the Inquisitor whispered litanies, and Wolverine prepared to hunt. The battlefield was still burning when the chains returned. Logan's arms were bound once more in links etched with scripture, his body dragged through the smoke and ash by guardsmen whose eyes refused to meet his. The Chaos Lord he had fought now lay in ruin, its corrupted armor torn and its body hacked apart by adamantium claws. But victory had not freed him. Instead, the moment the foe fell, the Inquisitor's order came swift and cold: shackle the beast. And so he was dragged back to the sanctified halls of the ecclesiarchy. The chamber was vast, filled with incense so thick it stung his lungs, the air heavy with the smell of melted wax and old blood. Candles lined every wall, their flames flickering before massive statues of the emperor in golden robes, arms raised as though demanding worship. Choirs sang in the distance, their voices high and sharp, chanting praises that clawed at the ears. Logan knelt at the center, forced down onto cold stone, Chains bound his wrists, ankles, and neck, linking him to a pillar carved with scripture. His healing factor battled against the burns, but the words bit deep, holding fast. The Inquisitor stood before him, her staff raised high. Around her, priests of the ecclesiarchy muttered litanies, sprinkling oils across his flesh. Every drop hissed against his skin like acid, though it left no mark. "You are strong," she said, her voice ringing in the hall. "Stronger than any mortal should be, stronger than most Astartes. But strength without faith is corruption, power without the Emperor's light is heresy. You will be tested." Logan's lip curled, his voice came low and rough. "I ain't your heretic, and I sure as hell ain't your faithful." The Inquisitor's eyes narrowed, but she did not raise her hand in anger. Instead she gestured to the priests. They approached, carrying chains heavier still, each link inscribed with prayers. They draped them across his shoulders, his chest, his back. The weight pressed him lower, every breath labored. One priest leaned close, whispering, "The beast must be broken before it serves." Logan growled, the sound reverberating in the chamber. His claws itched beneath his skin, desperate to be unleashed, but the scripture burned whenever he tried to extend them. For the first time, his instincts were caged. The Inquisitor circled him like a predator. "Do you know why faith binds you, mutant? Because you have none. You resist both Emperor and Chaos. You walk a line that does not exist in this age. There is no middle ground, only devotion or damnation." Logan raised his head, eyes burning through his tangled hair. "I've seen men kill for gods. I've seen 'em kill for kings, for flags, for pride. Doesn't matter what name they shout when they cut a throat, it all smells the same. Blood's blood." The priests recoiled at his words, crossing themselves in the sign of the Aquila. Murmurs of blasphemy echoed across the chamber, but the Inquisitor's gaze hardened. "You speak like a heretic. I speak like a man who's lived too long." Logan snarled. Her hand tightened on her staff. For a moment he thought she would strike him down then and there, but instead she turned to the altar, raising her voice so all could hear. "If he is beast, the Emperor will reveal it. If he is daemon, the wards will consume him. If he is weapon, then we shall see whether he can be turned to holy purpose." The priests began to chant. The air grew heavy, pressing against Logan's chest. The chains burned brighter, glowing faintly as scripture writhed like living fire. He gritted his teeth, every muscle straining against the pull, his skin blistering where the links touched. His healing fought to mend, but the wounds returned with every breath. And in the midst of it the whispers returned. "Submit. You cannot resist forever. Join the slaughter. Serve the dark and be free of chains." Another voice, softer, colder, "Or kneel to the false emperor. Bow your head, and they will call you saint instead of monster." Logan roared, shaking the chains, his voice echoing against the vaulted ceiling. "I ain't bowing to any of you." The chamber trembled. Candles guttered. Smoke swirled violently. The priests gasped, some falling to their knees, others screaming that the beast had been touched by the warp. The Inquisitor's face was unreadable, though her knuckles whitened on her staff. "You cannot stand alone. Not here, not in this age. Even you will choose." Logan lowered his head, his chest heaving, his breath ragged. Sweat and blood dripped from his skin, pooling at his knees, but his eyes gleamed with feral defiance. "I've been used, broken, chained before. Didn't stop me then, won't stop me now." The priests muttered, demanding his death, but the Inquisitor silenced them with a raised hand. She studied Logan as though trying to see through the flesh into the soul beneath. Finally she spoke, her voice calm, almost admiring. "Then perhaps you are not merely beast. Perhaps you are test. For us, for faith, for this world." Logan spat blood on the stone, a grin flashing despite the pain. "Lady, you got no idea what kind of test I can be." The Inquisitor turned away, her cloak sweeping across the stone. "Take him. Tomorrow he will march with us. Let the battlefield decide his truth." Chains were loosened, though not removed. Guards hauled him to his feet, dragging him back into darkness. The priests continued their chants, their voices sharp with fear and anger, and as Logan stumbled into the shadows, the whispers of the warp curled around him like smoke, laughing softly. "You will choose, Hunter. You will kneel. To light or to darkness, it does not matter. The blood will be ours." Logan's claws twitched beneath his skin, aching to be free. His eyes burned with feral fire. "If choice is all I got," he muttered, voice low and raw, "then I'll choose to never stop fighting." The chains rattled in answer, heavy as destiny itself. The battlefield stank of corpses. Hours had passed since the last charge, but the shrine world's surface was still a charnel ground. Smoke rose in black columns from craters, shattered cathedrals leaned like dying giants, and the air tasted of iron and ash. The guardsmen moved like shades among the ruins, dragging their wounded, whispering litanies to stiffen what courage remained, and at the center of it all, Logan stalked alone. The chains still clung to his arms, not to restrain his strength but to remind him of the leash the Inquisitor held. He could feel the scripture burning faintly against his skin, but it did little to quiet the gnawing hunger inside him, the need to kill, the ache for battle that had carried him through centuries. His claws slid free with a metallic snick as he knelt over a corpse, not out of hunger or curiosity but instinct. He smelled the blood, old, corrupted. The man had not simply been killed, his soul had been eaten away. Warp energy lingered in the flesh, whispering, mocking, and then the whisper became a voice. "You are strong, little hunter." The ground cracked. From the air itself tore a wound in reality, bleeding green and red fire. The guardsmen screamed and fell back, their prayers breaking into sobs. Out of the rift stepped something vast, its form shifting with every glance, a monstrous shape with too many arms, too many eyes, skin stretched into wings of shadow. Its laughter shook the ruins. A greater daemon. The warp bled into the world around it, stone melting, corpses rising only to collapse again, shadows twisting into screaming faces. The guardsmen dropped their weapons, some clawing at their own eyes, others chanting the Emperor's name until their throats bled. Logan stood firm. The daemon's voice filled his head, louder than thought, sweeter than poison. "You are a creature of war. I know your kind. You bleed, you heal, you bleed again, you rage until worlds burn. Why kneel to weak mortals when you could kneel to me?" Logan growled low in his throat. "Ain't kneeling to anyone." The daemon laughed, a sound like glass shattering. "Not even to yourself. You are a predator denied its true nature. You could kill without end. You could lead armies of beasts across the stars. Eternal, free, for a heartbeat." The temptation dug in. Images clawed at Logan's mind. Worlds bathed in fire. Daemons chanting his name, his claws dripping with the blood of emperors and gods alike. No more chains, no more guilt, just battle, just the hunt. He staggered, clutching his head. The whispers pressed deeper. "You already serve us. Every life you take is ours. Every scream, every drop of blood. Stop pretending you are more than what you are." He saw Jean's face, soft and kind, then burning. He saw the X-Men, his friends, his family, looking at him with horror. He saw himself standing alone at the end of all things, nothing left but claws and corpses. His growl rose into a roar. "I'm no one's slave." The daemon's grin widened. "Then prove it. Kill for me. Kill them all. Let your rage choose for you." The guardsmen cowered nearby, their weapons forgotten. The Inquisitor stood at the far end of the square, her staff raised, lips moving in silent prayer, her eyes fixed on him. She would not intervene. Not yet. Logan's claws dripped blood from his own palms, half extended in his struggle. His instincts screamed to fight, to kill, to let go. But another voice, buried deep, rasped back against the daemon's chorus. He remembered Xavier's words, "You're more than the animal they made you." The daemon lunged, wings tearing the air. Its claws swept down, larger than tank blades, aiming to crush him into the stone. Logan met it head on. He leapt into the swing, claws flashing. Adamantium ripped through warp flesh, black ichor spraying across the ruins. The daemon shrieked, its voice shaking the heavens. Logan tore into it, slashing again and again, his body flung aside by its strength but always rising, always returning, claws sinking into its endless hide. The guardsmen screamed in terror, some fleeing, others collapsing in prayer. The Inquisitor's eyes gleamed with cold calculation. The daemon's voice thundered even as its body failed. "You could be more than this. You could be eternal. Why suffer for men who hate you?" Logan buried his claws into its skull and roared into its face. "Because I fight for me." With a final wrench, he split its head apart. Warp fire erupted, the daemon howling as its form unraveled, dragged back into the immaterium. The rift sealed in a blast of green light, leaving only silence, smoke and the smell of scorched blood. Logan staggered, his chest heaving, his body dripping gore. His healing factor burned, but it held. The guardsmen stared in awe. Some whispered saint, others muttered monster. None dared move closer. The Inquisitor stepped forward at last, her staff tapping the stone, her eyes locked on him, unreadable. "You refused the warp. Few do. Perhaps you are stronger than I thought." Logan spat blood into the dirt, claws retracting with a sharp snick. "Don't mistake me for your damned saint. I ain't fighting for your emperor. I fight 'cause I choose to." The Inquisitor tilted her head, lips curling in the faintest of smiles. "So you say, but choice is an illusion here. In the end, all serve." Logan turned from her, eyes narrowing against the smoke and ruin. He didn't know if he believed her. He only knew one truth. The war was far from over, and somewhere deep in his bones the whispers laughed still. The world of ash and fire was gone. Logan did not know when the shift came, only that one moment he stood among ruins, smoke choking the sky, and the next he was walking through silence. Stars wheeled above him, cold and endless, brighter than any sky he had ever known. Beneath his boots lay a floor of glassy black, reflecting both him and constellations that burned with unfamiliar patterns. He stopped, claws half extended, his nostrils flared. There was no scent of blood here, no copper tang of death, only the dry cold of nothingness. And then they came. Figures moved out of the void, tall and slender, their forms wrapped in armor wrought like flowing art. Their helms glimmered with jewels, their robes embroidered with alien glyphs. Each step was weightless, deliberate. Their eyes, hidden behind masks, carried an age Logan could feel pressing against his skull. The Eldar, but not warriors of the battlefield. These were different, quieter, sharper. He had seen predators, and these were predators of the mind. One raised a hand, palm outward. You walk where you should not, outsider, yet the skeins of fate brought you here. Strange, the warp whispers your name, and still you stand apart. Logan growled low. Don't know what trick this is, but if you dragged me here, you better start explaining. The Eldar's head tilted as though amused by the crude words. You are within the paths of the Black Library, human, a place not meant for mortals, a place even daemons fear. The words meant little, but the tone did. This was no battlefield trap, this was judgment. They led him forward across the mirrored plain, through arches of bone that seemed grown rather than built, into halls lined with books and scrolls that burned faintly within a light. The library stretched without end, shelves spiraling into the dark. Whispers echoed from the tomes, voices like the warp but contained, bound in words instead of claws. Logan's claws itched at his palms. He didn't like this place. Too quiet, too clean, no scent of life, only the sharp tang of secrets. The Eldar who led him spoke again, voice calm, precise. You are paradox, a soul that does not yield, yet does not ascend. You cannot die, yet you are not eternal. The warp hungers for you, and yet you resist. Such things do not last. All threads fray, all paths end. Logan's lip curled. I've heard that before, and I'm still breathin'. The alien stopped before a massive gate carved of obsidian, etched with shifting runes. Its surface rippled like water, though it was stone. The Black Library is the sum of knowledge, the future, the past, all that was and all that may be. And it whispers of you, outsider. It asks whether you will be weapon or doom. Logan bristled. I ain't a weapon, not anymore. The Eldar tilted its head. You say this, even as blood stains your every step. You cannot escape what you are. The voices of the warp stirred in his skull again, faint at first, then louder, mocking. Yes, even they see it. Beast, killer, claws and rage, that is all you are. Logan snarled, pressing his hands to his head. Get out of my skull. The Eldar raised one finger, and the voices dimmed. For a heartbeat, blessed silence filled his mind. He breathed deep, chest heaving, eyes closing. Then the alien spoke once more. This is why you are here. The warp will not stop its pursuit. You are too rare a prize. Even the gods covet you, but the library shows paths untaken. You may yet choose. Logan opened his eyes, narrowing them. What choice? The Eldar gestured to the gate. To look, to see what lies ahead. Few mortals are granted this, but know this, knowledge is curse as much as gift. Once seen, it cannot be forgotten. Logan's claws slid free with a snikt. I ain't afraid of a curse. The Eldar did not stop him as he approached the gate. The surface rippled, black and endless, then parted. Within visions flared, worlds burning, stars collapsing, tides of daemons sweeping across galaxies. He saw himself at the center, claws red, eyes wild, laughter not his own tearing from his throat. Behind him legions of the dead marched, their blood feeding the warp. Then the vision shifted. He saw himself standing alone on a ruined world, bodies of guardsmen at his feet, the Imperium cursing his name, a saint and a heretic, worshipped and hunted in the same breath, his legend spreading like plague across the stars. Finally, he saw something else, brief, fleeting, the faces of those he had lost. John, Scott, Charles, all of them reaching for him, fading into shadow, their voices calling his name before the warp swallowed them whole. Logan staggered back, snarling, claws scraping stone. Enough. The gate sealed, the visions vanishing, silence returned, heavy as stone. The Eldar studied him for a long moment. Now you see, there is no path where you find peace, only war, only blood. The question is whether you are hunter or hunted. Logan's eyes burned, his voice came rough but steady. I don't care what your books say, I ain't fightin' for fate. I fight 'cause that's what I am, that's all I know. The Eldar inclined their head. Then go, hunter. The floor rippled beneath him, the shelves dissolving, the stars shattering into smoke. The library fell away, dragging him back into the waking world. When he opened his eyes, he was on his knees in the ruins once more, ash falling around him, guards staring wide-eyed. The Inquisitor loomed above, staff in hand, her voice sharp as a blade. "What did you see?" Logan met her gaze, his claws sliding back into his hands with a hiss. His answer was low, dangerous. "Enough to know this fight ain't ever gonna end." The world around him was no longer ash and ruin. One heartbeat he stood beneath the Inquisitor's gaze. The next he was swept into light, shifting, blinding, as if reality itself had folded inside out. When his boots touched ground again, he stood on a stage of silver and shadow. The air shimmered with colors that bent and twisted beyond natural sight. No battlefield sounds, no guardsmen, only silence broken by the soft chime of bells. Then the dancers came. Figures clad in motley armor and masks leapt from the void, their movements impossibly fluid, each step a story, each spin a blade. They were beautiful and terrible all at once, laughing without sound, their bodies painted with the grief and joy of 1,000 forgotten ages. Harlequins, the tricksters and prophets of the Eldar. Logan's claws slid free with a sharp snick. He had no patience for riddles. "Show yourselves proper, or get out of my way." A single Harlequin stepped forward, its mask half black, half white, eyes gleaming like stars. Its voice was a whisper that carried through the whole stage. "Logan, Wolverine, Hunter, you are not here by accident. You stand within the trial of the Harlequin, where all truths are danced, all lies revealed." Logan growled, "I don't dance." The Harlequin tilted its head. "Then you will fight. For here, all who enter must face themselves." The stage rippled. From the shadows, a figure emerged, his own silhouette, claws extended, eyes feral. It stalked toward him, every motion familiar. His double, his reflection. Logan's heart tightened. The doppelganger snarled, leaping with claws raised. Logan barely had time to parry, their blades clashing in sparks. Every strike mirrored his own, every snarl echoed his rage. He slashed low, the reflection met him blow for blow. He spun, claws carving air, only to meet the same strike in return. It was like fighting his own shadow, a beast that knew every weakness. The Harlequins circled, their dance weaving illusions. Around the stage, Logan saw memories spill like smoke, scenes of his past lives. He saw Jean's face, eyes full of fire and sorrow. He saw Weapon X, the tanks and scientists carving metal into his bones. He saw blood, so much blood, innocence cut down by claws he could not always control. The reflection roared, driving him to the ground, claws poised for his throat. Its eyes blazed with fury, but beneath that pain, Logan caught its wrists, muscles screaming, their claws locked inches from his flesh, and in its face, he saw truth. This wasn't a daemon, this wasn't warp trickery, this was him. Every life he'd taken, every rage he hadn't tamed, the animal he feared he truly was. The Harlequin's voice whispered around him, "Do you choose the beast, or the hunter? Will you be slave to blood, or master of it?" The reflection pressed harder, his strength faltered, his rage burned, begging to be unleashed. He could give in, tear this double apart, let fury win, or he could face it, accept it. Logan snarled, then let his claws retract. The reflection froze, eyes wide. Logan's grip tightened, not in violence but in defiance. "I know what I am," he growled, breath ragged. "I've killed, I've failed, I've been a weapon, but I ain't running from it anymore." The reflection shuddered, its claws trembling. Then it dissolved into smoke, leaving only the echo of its roar fading into silence. The Harlequins bowed as one, their laughter like the toll of bells. The masked figure stepped forward again. "You have faced yourself and chosen. Few hunters admit the beast within, fewer still master it." Logan stood, his chest heaving, sweat and blood streaking his skin, though no wound remained. His voice came rough. "I don't need your trials, I don't need your blessings, I just need to keep fighting." The Harlequin tilted its mask, amusement in its strange eyes. "And fight you will, but know this, the galaxy is a stage larger than you can imagine, and every hunter becomes prey in time." The stage began to dissolve, the colors fading into black. The laughter echoed, twisting into the sound of drums, then into gunfire, then into screams. Logan blinked, and the battlefield returned. The guardsmen were still there, eyes wide. The Inquisitor stood unmoved, though her gaze sharpened when she saw him reappear from nothing. Her staff tapped the ground. "Where did you go?" Logan wiped blood from his lip, his claws sliding back with a hiss. "Don't ask unless you want nightmares." The guards muttered prayers, some shrinking from him as though he carried warp fire in his veins. The Inquisitor said nothing more, but her eyes lingered on him, calculating. Logan turned from them, his chest heavy. The trial had left no wound on his body, but it had carved scars in his soul. He had faced the beast within, and though he had not slain it, he had claimed it. But even now, in the corners of his mind, the laughter of the Harlequin lingered, promising that the true trial was yet to come. The world was fire again. When Logan returned from the Harlequin's illusions, he found no peace waiting. The Shrine World's last bastion, a city of spires and sanctified halls, was under siege. From horizon to horizon, the banners of chaos spread like rot, their legions swarming over the ashen wastes. The air was black with smoke and spores, the ground slick with gore. Artillery thundered like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Logan stood atop a wall of fractured stone, his eyes narrowing at the carnage below. Guardsmen screamed prayers as they fired into the endless horde. The Inquisitor stalked among them, her staff raised, her voice calm and merciless, promising salvation for the faithful and damnation for the weak. But to Logan it was all the same. Blood, smoke, death. The city was crucible, and he was cast back into it. The first charge came at dawn. Traitor guards and cultists surged from the smoke, a tide of screaming bodies wielding rusted blades and stolen rifles. The defenders met them with volleys of Lars fire, the air turning red with streaks of light. Men died screaming on both sides. Logan leapt from the wall into the fray, claws sliding free with a metallic snikt. He tore through the first wave like a storm. His claws punched through ribs, slashed open throats, gutted bodies before they could cry out. His healing factor shrugged off Lars' bolts and blades, his body a machine of survival and slaughter. The guardsmen who fought beside him faltered, some shouting praise, others recoiling in horror. He was no soldier, he was no saint, he was something else, something that killed without hesitation, something that rose again and again no matter how many wounds it took. Above the clash, the Inquisitor's voice thundered, "Behold the Emperor's hound, even the mutant fights for his glory." Logan snarled at the words, his claws buried in a cultist's chest. He didn't fight for their god. He didn't fight for chains or banners. He fought because the enemy was here, because prey had come to him, and he was the predator. But even predators tire. By the second charge, his body burned with exhaustion. Dozens of wounds had opened and closed, his blood soaking into the earth only to be replaced by more. His breath came ragged, his arms heavy. The dead lay piled around him, and still the enemy came. Then the ground shook. From the smoke strode Chaos Marines, their armor blackened with sigils, their bolters roaring. Explosive shells tore through stone, men and steel alike. A guardsman beside Logan vanished in a cloud of fire, nothing left but red mist. The line wavered, fear spread. Logan roared, hurling himself into the giants. His claws sparked against ceramite, punching through seams, tearing into flesh beneath. One Marine fell, then another, but each strike cost him. A bolter shell burst against his side, tearing flesh from bone. A chainsword screamed across his ribs, nearly cutting him in half. He fell to his knees, gasping blood, but he rose again. He always rose. The guardsmen saw it, their eyes wide. Some whispered, "Saint," others hissed, "Demon." Even the Inquisitor's gaze lingered, sharp with calculation. The third charge broke the city gates. Through the splintered stone marched a tide of horrors. Mutants twisted by the warp, their limbs stretched into claws, their faces half demon. Behind them loomed a massive figure, clad in Baroque armor, horns curling from his helm, his blade wreathed in fire. A chaos champion, his presence enough to break mortal courage. The guards faltered. Men dropped their weapons, falling to their knees in despair. Logan stepped forward. He was drenched in blood, his chest heaving, his claws gleaming red. His body was a ruin of scars, but his eyes burned with feral light. He stood not as savior, not as saint, but as something older, something that refused to break. The champion pointed his blade. "See how even their beast fights for us. He belongs to the slaughter. He belongs to the dark." The whispers in Logan's skull surged, clawing at his thoughts. "Yes, you belong. You always have. You kill and kill and kill. This is your truth." He staggered, his claws trembling. For a heartbeat, he saw himself surrender, saw himself leading legions of chaos, his claws dripping across worlds. The temptation burned like fire in his veins. Then he remembered the trial. He remembered the reflection of himself, the beast that had nearly broken him. He had faced it. He had claimed it. With a snarl, he steadied his stance. "I belong to no one." The champion roared, charging forward, blade howling. Logan met him with claws raised. Their clash split the air, sparks flying, the ground cracking beneath their feet. Bolt of fire and last bolts screamed around them, but all eyes fixed on the duel, the predator against the monster. The guardsman prayed, the cultist chanted, the Inquisitor whispered litanies. Logan's claws sparked against the daemon blade, each strike rattling his bones. Pain burned through his body, his healing strained, but he fought on, snarling with every breath. The champion's strength was vast, but Logan was unbreakable. He had been torn apart, burned alive, shattered 1,000 times, and he always rose. Blood sprayed across the stones. The champion raised his blade high for the final strike. Logan lunged low, his claws driving upward through the giant's chest, ripping free in a gush of fire and ichor. The champion screamed, collapsing into the ash, his blade extinguished. The battlefield froze. Guardsmen stared in awe, cultists wailed in despair, and Logan stood, drenched in blood, claws dripping, his chest heaving. The Inquisitor raised her staff high. "Behold the Emperor's judgment. His beast is our weapon." The guards cheered weakly, though many eyes still burned with fear. Logan turned away, his voice a growl lost in the din. "I ain't your damn weapon." But even as he said it, the whispers in his skull laughed. "No, Hunter, you are more. You are the crucible, and every crucible must break." The city smoldered in ruin. Ash blanketed the shattered streets, mingling with rivers of blood. The cries of the dying echoed between toppled spires, mingling with the droning hymns of priests who marched among the wounded, blessing the faithful and condemning the weak. The battle was won, but victory tasted like rust and smoke, and in the center of it all stood Logan. His body was drenched in gore, his wounds still weeping, though already sealing beneath his battered flesh. His claws dripped steadily, each drop hissing as it struck stone. He breathed hard, chest rising and falling, his eyes feral in the glow of burning ruins. The guardsmen stared at him. Some bowed their heads, whispering prayers, calling him a miracle, an immortal champion sent by the Emperor to deliver them. Others crossed themselves in fear, whispering of demons in flesh, demanding his destruction. The same mouths that praised him cursed him. Sometimes in the same breath, the name began to spread among the survivors, the heretic saint. It was whispered in reverence and spat in disgust, carried in the trembling voices of men who had seen him fight, a figure who healed from mortal wounds, who fought like a beast yet stood against chaos, a savior or a curse. Logan felt their eyes on him, heavy as chains. He remembered Weapon X, how they had branded him a weapon. He remembered Xavier, who had tried to make him a man again. Now here, in this nightmare of faith and fire, they wanted to make him something else, a symbol. He hated it. The Inquisitor approached, her staff striking stone with each step. Her armor was streaked with blood, her pale face lit by fire. She studied him like a hunter appraising prey. "You see it, don't you?" she said. "How they look at you, half with worship, half with dread. You are proof the Emperor's hand still guides us." Logan's claws slid free with a hiss. "Don't twist this. I ain't your proof. I ain't your saint." Her lips curled faintly, almost a smile. "You may deny it, but faith is not yours to command. They believe because they must, and belief is power. You are weapon, and you are icon, whether you will it or not." He turned away, his growl low. "I've been used before. I ain't letting it happen again." But even as he spoke, guards knelt in the mud, raising hands toward him, their prayers trembling. One broken soldier wept, calling Logan's name instead of the Emperor's. Another spat blood, whispering that the mutant was a false idol, a test sent by the warp. Their voices rose and clashed, filling the air until it was a storm of devotion and hate. Logan shut his eyes, claws clenched so tight, blood ran from his palms. He wanted to silence them all, to vanish, to be no one, but he could not. The Inquisitor's voice cut through the storm. "The Imperium will hear of this." Already rumors spread. A beast who cannot die, a clawed warrior who slays demons with his bare hands. Some will call you Emperor's chosen, others will demand your death. The galaxy will turn its gaze to you. Logan's eyes opened, sharp with fury. "I never asked for this. No one does," she replied, voice cold. "Saints are not chosen by themselves. They are chosen by the Imperium, or by the people who need them." The words coiled around him like fresh chains. Later, when the night fell, Logan walked alone through the city's ruins. His boots crunched over broken glass and bone. The fires had dimmed to embers, but the smell of smoke lingered, choking and heavy. He passed bodies stacked in piles, guards and cultists alike, their faces frozen in pain or prayer. Priests moved among them, anointing the dead with oils, branding the heretic corpses with holy fire. One priest paused when he saw Logan. His eyes widened, and he dropped to his knees, bowing. "Blessed be the Saint of Claws, blessed be the Emperor's beast." Logan froze, the words cut deeper than any wound. He stepped closer, growling, "Get up, I ain't your saint." The priest flinched but did not rise. "You are miracle. The Emperor works through you." Logan turned away, fury burning in his chest. He wanted to deny it, to snarl, to tear the words apart, but deep inside, another whisper rose, softer, colder. "If they believe you are a saint, how long before they worship you instead of their emperor? How long before the Imperium turns to purge you?" He remembered the visions in the Black Library, the paths of blood, the faces of the fallen, the war without end. He remembered the trial of the Harlequin, the beast within him, and he knew the truth. He could not escape this. No matter what he did, no matter how he fought, he would be marked by faith, by fear, by blood. The night deepened. The ruins creaked. Logan stood at the edge of a collapsed spire, looking out over the battlefield. His claws slid free with a hiss, gleaming in the firelight. He was no saint, but the galaxy would call him one, and in the distance the warp whispered, laughing. The night did not sleep. Even after the battle's end, the shrine world groaned with voices. Some were human, priests chanting hymns, guardsmen whispering prayers of thanks or curses for the dead. But beneath them, threading through every word and silence, came something else, a resonance, a pulse, the warp itself, whispering through stone and ash. Logan stalked the ruins, claws half extended, his senses stretched taut. The city felt like a wound refusing to close, and at its center, something deeper waited. He didn't have to wait long. The ground beneath him cracked, stone splitting like old scars. From the fissure rose a column of green fire, warping air and flesh alike. Guardsmen nearby screamed, their bodies contorting as the flames licked them, bones snapping, skin twisting into grotesque new forms. They shrieked in agony, their voices merging into one chorus, a hymn of slaughter. Logan's claws slid out fully with a metallic snikt. His lip curled. "I've heard this song before." From the flames emerged figures robed in black, their bodies painted with runes of blood, chaos sorcerers, their eyes glowing with warp light, their hands weaving arcs of crimson fire. They spoke as one, their voices layered, echoing, "We call you hunter, we claim you. Every kill you have made was prayer to us, every life taken was offering. You are butcher, and butchers belong to the dark gods." The warp pressed harder against his skull. Images assaulted him, every death by his claws replayed in merciless detail. Innocents screaming, soldiers bleeding out, Jinnah's face pale and broken. He staggered, clutching his head, the claws at his hands trembling. The sorcerers advanced, their chant deepening. Warp light coiled around Logan like chains, pressing against his flesh, trying to tear his soul free. "Submit, your blood has always been ours." He fell to one knee, his healing factor roared, but it could not stop the invasion of his mind. The whispers surged louder, not just from the warp but from within, his own memories, his own sins. He saw Weapon X, the scientists carving into him, the tanks bubbling with his blood. He saw himself clawing through innocence when rage had taken control. He saw the beast unleashed, unstoppable, uncaring. For a moment, he wanted to give in, to accept the truth, that he was butcher, that all his resistance was nothing but denial. And then another memory cut through the storm, Xavier's voice. "You are more than the animal they made you." Logan snarled through clenched teeth, his claws gouging stone. "I ain't yours," the sorcerers hissed, their voices rising. "All blood is ours, all rage is ours. Pray with us, butcher. Let the galaxy hear your hymn." The warp chains tightened. Logan's body convulsed, torn between the pull of the Immaterium and the iron will that had carried him through centuries. His healing struggled, his soul buckled, but he did not break. With a roar he drove his claws into his own chest. Pain exploded, blood poured down his front. But the act was defiance, a wound chosen, not given, a reminder that he was his own master. The warp faltered, its chains slipping. The sorcerers reeled, their chant breaking. Logan surged forward. He ripped into the first sorcerer, claws tearing through robes and flesh, scattering bone and warp light in one strike. The second screamed, summoning fire, but Logan barreled through it, his skin blistering, healing, blistering again. He cut the heretic in half, his roar drowning the sorcerer's cries. The third tried to flee, vanishing into smoke, but Logan's claws found him in mid-air, dragging him down, tearing him apart. Silence fell, the warp fire guttered, shrinking back into the fissure. The sorcerer's blood soaked the stones, sizzling like acid, leaving runes burned into the ground. Logan stood over the corpses, his chest heaving, his claws dripping red, his chest wound closed slowly, the pain lingering, carved deep in both flesh and mind. But the whispers had not stopped. They hissed from the shadows, softer now, almost tender. "You cannot deny what you are. You are butcher. You are prayer made flesh. Every claw strike is him. Every kill is offering. And one day, You will kneel, not because we break you, but because you realize you were always ours." Logan wiped the blood from his mouth, growling low, "I'll never kneel, not to you, not to anyone." The laughter that followed was endless, echoing through the ruins. The guardsmen who had witnessed it fell to their knees. Some prayed to the Emperor for salvation. Others whispered that Logan was saint and heretic both, savior and monster. The name heretic saint spread further, their voices trembling as they spoke it. The Inquisitor arrived, her eyes sharp as knives. She surveyed the scene, the corpses, the runes, the blood, and then fixed her gaze on Logan. "You resisted the warp again," she said, "even as it clawed at your soul. Few can do this." Logan's claws retracted with a hiss. His voice came low and raw. "I ain't resisting for your Emperor, I'm resisting for me." The Inquisitor's lips tightened, unreadable. The line between saint and heretic grows thin. "Wolverine, pray you do not fall to the wrong side of it." Logan turned away, his eyes burning with feral light. "Pray all you want, I'll keep fighting, no matter what side you think I'm on." Above them the warp shimmered faintly, like a wound that refused to heal, and in the shadows of that wound the dark gods smiled. The cathedral world was falling, its spires, once golden, now bled fire into the sky. Gargoyles toppled from shattered roofs, their wings broken on the streets below. Ashes swirled through air thick with warp stink, choking the cries of the dying. What had once been a sanctum of faith had become an arena of annihilation. Logan stood amid the ruin, claws drawn, his breath rising in white plumes against the heat. His body was a ruin of scars, though his healing closed each wound as fast as new ones came. He felt the weight of exhaustion like iron in his bones, but still he stood, still he hunted, because something greater had come for him. The ground quaked, stones cracking, statues splitting down their faces. From the shattered altar at the cathedral's heart rose a shape vast and terrible, horned, winged, armored in flesh and steel. Warp fire burned in its eyes, and its voice shook the world. A daemon prince. The guardsmen scattered, some fleeing outright, others clutching their weapons with shaking hands. The Inquisitor did not flinch. Her staff rose, her voice cold and steady as she intoned litanies of banishment. But her eyes fixed on Logan, sharp as blades. This was not her fight, it was his. The prince's laughter was thunder. "Little beast, little hunter, you think you stand apart, but you are ours. Rage is prayer, blood is worship. You were made for this moment." The whispers surged in Logan's skull, clawing at his thoughts. "Kneel, give yourself to us. You could be eternal, claw and fury without end. You could be god of the hunt." Logan spat blood into the dirt. His claws slid free with a metallic snikt. "You talk too much." The prince struck first. Its sword, forged of bone and fire, crashed down, splitting stone where Logan had stood a heartbeat before. Heat washed over him, searing his skin. He lunged forward, claws sparking against warp-forged metal. The shock wave hurled him back, bones snapping, lungs collapsing. He hit the ground hard, choking, vision dim, but he rose. He always rose. The prince roared, sweeping its blade in a wide arc. Logan darted inside its guard, claws slashing across its thigh. Warp blood hissed into the air, burning like acid. The prince howled, wings unfurling in a storm of ash, and kicked Logan across the nave. He smashed into a pillar, stone collapsing onto him. He shoved the rubble aside, his healing sealing broken bones, his eyes wild with rage. He charged again, faster than thought, claws flashing. They punched into the prince's chest, tearing through hide and bone, ichor spraying in torrents. The daemon's laughter shook the walls. "Yes, bleed me, feed me. Every strike binds you closer." The whispers clawed harder, showing him visions, worlds burning under his claws, mortals chanting his name as god of slaughter. He saw himself leading armies of beasts, endless war with no end. And deep inside, the temptation coiled. He wanted it, the hunt without end, the kill without guilt. But then he remembered. He remembered Jean's eyes, Xavier's dream, the trial of the Harlequin, where he had faced his own shadow. The beast was his, but it was not master. Logan snarled, slashing upward, his claws tearing through the prince's jaw. The daemon reeled, bellowing, its sword falling wide. Logan leapt onto its chest, driving both sets of claws into its throat. Warp fire gushed, the sound of 1,000 screams breaking through the cathedral walls. The prince staggered, smashing its fists into him, bones breaking with every blow. But Logan held on, his claws buried deep, tearing and tearing until the daemon's head split open in a torrent of ichor and flame. With a final roar, the prince collapsed, shaking the cathedral to its foundations. The altar split, statues crumbled, the stained glass windows shattered into storms of color. Logan fell with it, slamming into the stone floor, his body mangled, his breath ragged, his wounds sealed, but his soul felt burned raw. Silence followed. The guards stared from the shadows, their faces pale. Some whispered prayers to the Emperor, calling Logan a miracle. Others muttered curses, saying no mortal could kill a prince without being touched by the warp. The word spread again. Heretic saint. The Inquisitor stepped forward, her staff tapping stone. She looked down at him, eyes unreadable. You slew a Daemon prince with your bare hands. No Astartes has done this. The Imperium will hear of it. Logan growled, claws retracting with a hiss. I didn't do it for your Imperium. I did it 'cause it needed killing. Her gaze hardened. The galaxy will not care why. It will only care that you did. You cannot escape what you are now. You are symbol. You are curse. Logan wiped ichor from his face, his breath still heavy. His voice came low, bitter. I'm not your saint, and I ain't Chaos's dog either. I'm just me, and me's enough. Above, the cathedral groaned. Stone split as the roof caved in, fire consuming the sacred halls. Logan turned away, walking into the ruin, his silhouette framed against the burning light. Behind him the Inquisitor whispered to her acolytes, her words sharp as knives. Spread the tale. Let them speak of the beast who cannot die. Let them argue whether he is Emperor's miracle or Warp's curse. Either way, his name will bind them. The guardsmen murmured prayers. Some made the sign of the Aquila, others spat in the dirt, and Logan walked into the smoke, claws at his sides, knowing the hunt would never end. The Daemon was dead. The cathedral was ash, but the whispers still followed, soft and endless. You are Butcher. You are Saint. You are ours. He growled into the fire, voice low and final. Not yours. Never yours. The flames answered with laughter. The cathedral world lay in ruin. The Daemon prince was gone, its body scattered into smoke and ichor, its throne of bone reduced to rubble. But victory was ash in the mouth. Entire districts smoldered, streets clogged with corpses, towers broken to their foundations. The survivors limped among the ruins, guardsmen dragging comrades whose eyes had gone glassy, priests lifting hymns to smother the smell of death. And through it all Logan walked, his boots crunched over shattered glass and blood-slick stone. His claws retracted with a final hiss, their work done for now. His body was a lattice work of wounds half-healed, his chest heavy with exhaustion. The healing factor kept him standing, but it could not mend the weight in his soul. Everywhere he turned, eyes followed him. Some were wide with awe, lips whispering prayers to the Saint of Claws. Others narrowed in hatred, hands forming the sign of the Aquila, as if warding off a Daemon. Faith and fear tangled in every glance, and his name was already a rumor spreading faster than fire. The Inquisitor stood at the heart of the ruin, staff planted in the bloodied stone. She watched him as though she had been waiting for this very moment. Her face betrayed nothing, but her voice carried the sharpness of judgment. You have slain a prince of the warp, she said. You have endured where no mortal should. The Imperium will call you a saint, Chaos will call you theirs, and both will hunt you for what you are. Logan stopped before her, his eyes burning through the smoke. I ain't theirs, I ain't yours, I'm just me. Her lips tightened, the faintest trace of a smile or perhaps a sneer. That is not a choice the galaxy will honor. In this age you are either weapon, idol, or heretic. You cannot be man. Logan's jaw clenched. Maybe not, but I'll keep fighting anyway. She inclined her head, almost a bow, almost mockery. Then fight, and know the Imperium will never forget you. She turned away, her acolytes falling into step. Already they scribbled words on parchment, recording his deeds, polishing them into tales of miracle and judgment. Logan knew those words would spread across systems like plague. Soon his legend would outgrow him. He hated it. The guardsmen parted as he walked on. Some reached for him whispering blessings, others spat and cursed, calling him abomination. He ignored them all. His claws had silenced demons, princes, gods, and yet he could not silence belief. The ruins grew quieter as he left the crowd behind. He found himself at the edge of the city, where ash fell in soft veils, covering broken statues like snow. One statue remained half-standing, a colossal emperor in golden robes, its face shattered, its hand reaching endlessly upward. Logan stopped before it, staring at the broken god. The whispers curled at the edge of his mind again, soft, mocking. You cannot escape. They will worship you or burn you. Either way you are ours. He growled, voice low. I've heard enough. His claws slid free with a metallic snikt, gleaming in the half-light. With a single savage strike he carved across the statue's base, sending the last of it crashing into the ash. Stone shattered, dust rising into the air. The echo rolled across the ruins like thunder. He stood alone in the silence that followed, his claws dripping stone dust instead of blood. The Inquisitor's words lingered in his skull. You are not man. You are weapon, idol, or heretic. But Logan refused. He was not weapon. He was not idol. He was not saint or butcher, though the galaxy would call him all of these in time. He was Logan, Wolverine, nothing more and nothing less. The sky rumbled. Warp light flickered faintly on the horizon. The wound in reality never truly closed. The galaxy would not rest, chaos would not rest, and the Imperium, chained by its own faith, would never stop hunting. Logan took a deep breath, the ash stinging his lungs. His claws slid back into his hands with a final click. He turned his back on the ruins, on the statue, on the city that had already begun to turn his name into story. The hunt was not over, it never would be, but he would endure, because that was what he did, because he always rose. And as he disappeared into the endless smoke and silence of the 41st Millennium, his name followed him, whispered by soldiers, priests and heretics alike. The heretic saint, Wolverine, the man who would not kneel,